Hello everyone and welcome to the part 2 of this tutorial where we were making an effects like this. If you didn't see the first part, I'll leave a link in the description where you can go watch it and come to this one after that. In the part 1, we make 3 materials. And now we're gonna use those materials to start making the effects. We're gonna start by creating a new folder for the effects. Inside of it, let's right click and go to the effects categories and choose Niagara emitter. Let's click next and choose the simple sprite burst as a beginning point. We're gonna use this emitter as a base for our system. Let's open it. Go to the emitter state and change the loop behavior to infinite, and let's also give it a duration of 4 seconds. For the rest of this emitter, we're gonna leave it like this because this emitter gonna be the building block for our system and we wanna keep it as simple as possible. Now let's right click again, go to the effects categories and choose now a Niagara system. Now click next and choose the emitter that we just created as the base by clicking on the plus icon. You can now name it however you like and open it to start the process. Now as you can see, the base emitter that we created earlier is right here and we can reuse it anytime we want. Let's go to the sprite render and change the facing mode to custom facing vector. This will make this sprite face a custom axis that we want instead of always facing the camera. Now let's add the m_ground_glow and the material slot of the sprite. Go to the initialize particle module and change the lifetime to 3 seconds. And also modify the size to this value, 500. In the particle spawn section, let's click on this plus icon and search for orientation. Let's choose the align sprite to mesh orientation module. This module will allow us to make the sprite face on a specific orientation that we want. We're gonna make this sprite face the ground, so we will add 1 for the z-axis and 0 to the rest. Now you should have a result like this one. In the initialize module, let's give it a bright color like this by adding 10 and the green channel. This one is done for now and we're gonna duplicate it by clicking on it and type Ctrl W to duplicate it. This emitter is now the same as the first one, but we're gonna add more to it. Let's go to the sprite render and change the material to the m_circle_01 that we created in the last video. And now things should look like this. In the particle object section, let's search for scale sprite size. We're gonna click on this little icon and search for float. Take this one, and after that, let's convert this float to a curve by searching for curve and choose this one. We're gonna modify this curve to make the effects start little, expand and shrink again. Click on the first key in this curve and change its values to 0. Now right click on the middle of this curve to add a new key to it. Let's give it a value of 1. Now let's select all the keys, right click on one of them and check the auto keys. Now we should have some handle to modify it like this. Now let's up the size of the first emitter by 700, like this. We will also want the ground glow to have the same animation as the second one. We're gonna copy the scale sprite size of this one and paste it on the first one. If you hold Alt and click on a module, you can drag it like this on another existing emitter in your system. This will automatically copy the module to the first one. And now as you can see, they both have the same scaling animation. Now we're gonna duplicate the first emitter again by clicking on it and type Ctrl W on the keyboard. Now we have a third emitter on the graph. For this one, let's go to the sprite render and reset the facing mode back to its default values by clicking on this icon. Now our effects should have a nice glow in the middle like this. Let's also reduce the scale a little bit for now. And after that, we're done with this one. We're gonna duplicate this exact emitter and we're gonna modify it a little bit. We're gonna change the scale and the initialize module to a low values like 50. Let's add a sphere location and the particle spawn section. And let's up the spawn count to 20 or more if you want. As you can see, we'll start to see some little glow appear. For the size, let's randomize it by first convert it to a float. After that, click here and search for range and choose this one. Let's give it a minimum of 20 and a max of 30. We're gonna make this little glow fly up every time this effects expand. And for that, we're gonna add the velocity module and the particle update section. If we get this error, let's click fix it and move on. For the value, let's give it 1 on the z-axis or any value to your preference. And then you start to see the particle goes up like this. You can also randomize this value if you want. Now let's move on by duplicate the first emitter again and disable the sprite render module and it by clicking on this check icon. We're gonna add a mesh render like this instead. And the mesh section, let's add the mesh that we imported for the project. Like this. We will also want the mesh to have the same scaling animation as the other ones. For that, we need to replace the scale sprite size module by the mesh one instead. Before we delete this module, let's copy this curve. And after that, add the scale mesh size module instead. Let's click on this icon and search for float and choose this one. Let's convert this float to a curve like we did in the other one. And after that, paste the curve that we copied earlier. Now the mesh should have the same animation like the rest. If it is not working, try to move this module like this to refresh it. Now let's go back to the mesh render module and check the override material to add a new one. Let's add the circle underscore 02 material that we made. And things should look like this. And the particle update section, let's add the mesh rotation module to make it rotate a little. If we get this error, let's click fix it and move on. We're gonna make this emitter rotate on the z-axis. You can play with the number if you want, but at the end, I found 360 is the best. Now should be a good time to test how this effect looks and the level, because we almost done with it. What I'm doing right now is tweaking some color values to make it look softer. In order to add more variation, let's duplicate the last emitter and tweak it a little. For this one, as you can see, I'm playing with the initial scale of it to get some variation. Making an effect is always about experimenting and tweaking until you have something you're satisfied with. If you want, you can still keep duplicating those emitters to add more variation until you're satisfied. But for me, I'll stop there. As you can see, this is my final result. I made some color variation to make things more interesting. If you found this video helpful, please leave a like or a comment that will let me know to keep making videos like this. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.